Hi guys, I'm Alex the Flute Nerd, and today I'm going to talk to you about something probably most flutists have struggled with at some point in their career: scales. Scales can be boring, and we often either get discouraged by the sheer tedium of their repetitiveness or feel defeated by fingers that just don't feel like they're cooperating. But what if I told you there was a trick we could add to our scale practice that not only made them more productive, but made them actually fun? It sounds like witchcraft, doesn't it? But it's not. This is the idea behind gamification. So in this video, we're going to explore the concept of gamification and why it's a valuable tool that can revolutionize your scale practice. I'll also share a few of my favorite games that I've come up with over the years that have helped make my own practice more fun. So let's jump in. First, let's address the elephant in the room. Why do we even have to practice scales? Scales are the foundation of music. Everything you will play is some combination of scales and scale patterns. Unfortunately, this means that practicing our scales is a little bit like the musical equivalent of eating your vegetables. We all know they're good for you, but nobody likes them. Don't lie, nobody likes Brussels sprouts. But what if we change the way we think about our scales? Just like you might hide those vegetables in something tastier, we can add the trick of gamification to our scales that actually makes them fun. And if we end up enjoying our practice, we're not only more productive, but we learn faster. So what is gamification? This is the idea that we add elements of gameplay like competition, rewards, chance, and challenges to everyday activities that might otherwise feel boring. The idea is to create a sense of fun, which encourages engagement. So why should we consider adding gamification to our scale practice? Let's think about it this way. I bet there's probably at least one point in your life when you got completely lost in a game. You lost hours because you were having so much fun playing the game. Maybe you stayed up way past your bedtime playing Pokemon on your Game Boy, or perhaps a 1.5 hour train journey flew by because you were too busy playing Candy Crush on your phone that you didn't notice. All those games are extremely repetitive, but I bet you didn't notice because you were having fun. Just think about what you could do if you had as much fun practicing your scales and spent that many hours practicing them. Gamification refocuses our attention away from the repetitiveness of them. Instead, we're concentrating on the positive experience of the rewards and incentives of the gameplay. And that means we're more likely to keep practicing and we'll get better faster. Why wouldn't you want to add that to your scale practice? But I can hear a few of you out there saying, are we really learning if we're having fun? Whoa, okay. I'm gonna stop you right there. There is this unfortunate conception that classical musicians have to be boring, stuffy savants, and that music education has to be tedious, grueling, and hard work. Just think of the movie Whiplash.
Am I to understand that you cannot read tempo? Can you even read music?
I cannot tell you how much I hate this idea. It is a load of crock. Yes, of course we have to work really hard when we're practicing, but that doesn't mean we can't have fun along the way. And to top it all off, there are so many studies out there that have proven that if we're learning in a creative and fun, engaging manner, we're way more likely to retain that information. And it's worth repeating that gamification means that we have fun and are more likely to continue practicing. It's a win-win situation. So, how do you gamify your practice? The first step is to identify what exactly you need to gamify. These will be the exercises that you struggle to play because they're either too boring or so difficult that you get completely demotivated. I imagine most of you out there will probably say that your scales fit that category, but there might be a few of you that would say that your tone exercises are the main culprit. Now that you know what bits of your practicing need a little bit of life added to them, have a think about what your favorite games to play are. Do you like board games, make-believe games, video games, anything? Try to take aspects of those games and see if there's anything you can add to your practice. Easy elements to add are dice or playing cards. Or maybe create a point system or race against the clock. Get creative. The possibilities are endless. But remember that the goal is to have fun. Even if you create a game that is wildly creative and very complex, if you don't enjoy playing it, it's not really going to help. While I hope that you might be inspired to go off into the wilderness of the practice room and come up with your very own games, here are a few of my favorites that you might like to add to your practice. Number 1 is the scale game. A lot of you may already be familiar with this, but it is from Michel Debost's book, The Simple Flute. In the book, he calls this his gamme game. Gamme is French for scale. See what he did there? And this is all based on exercise number 4 from Taffanel and Gaubert's 17 daily exercises. For this exercise, he created a chart of 30 scales, which include all of your major and minors and a few 8VA versions, and 60 patterns that are all variations of tempo, dynamic, and rhythms. The idea is that you pick one key and one pattern and move down the list. So you'd play C major with pattern number 1, and then C major 8VA with pattern number 2, and so on. Once you reach the end of the keys, you repeat them, but continue down the patterns. So C major with pattern 31, and then C major 8VA with pattern 32. When you reach the end of the patterns, you start all over, but offset everything by 1. So C major will be played with pattern number 2, C major 8VA will be played with pattern number 3, and so on. Even for advanced players, this is all a bit much, but the idea behind it is great. It mixes everything up, so we're not playing scales in the same way every time we play them. But it's not really a game, is it? You can add an element of chance to this game by making a stack of flashcards that you can write each one of the patterns on and then draw from that when you play a scale. Or if you're anything like me, you can create a spreadsheet of the whole thing. Bear with me. And every time you play a scale really well, you will highlight that cell in green. If you play okay, but there were a few minor mistakes, make it yellow. And if there were quite a few big mistakes, make it red. And then the idea is to see how green you can make your spreadsheet. I do love spreadsheets. For something a little bit more game-like, I've got game number 2, Face the Music. This is a game that I came up with, and it just uses a regular pack of playing cards. Now, I say regular pack of playing cards, and of course I do have glittery pink playing cards because, you know, I'm just that kind of gal. For this game, you're going to separate your jacks, queens, and kings from the deck to make a separate pile. These are going to represent every single one of your chromatic notes. You might want to write down a key of what card means what note. Then you're going to make up rules for the rest of the deck. For example, if you draw 2, you might have to play in slurred 2s. Or if you draw a 3, you'll have to play in triplets. Black cards mean you play major, and red cards mean you'll play the minor version of that scale. So then for the gameplay, you'll draw one of the face cards and then one of the number cards. So for example, if I drew a queen of hearts and a 4 of clubs, my queen means I play an E. The black means I have to play E major, and the 4 means I have to slur in 4s. Now, if I play that scale very well, I get to take both cards and place them in a points pile. But if I played the scale with a few minor mistakes, or it wasn't as confident as I'd like, I replace the face card in the face card pile, but I get to keep the number card in my points pile. If I played the scale with quite a few major mistakes, I have to take both cards and place them in a penalty pile. Obviously, the point of this game is to end up with more cards in your points pile than in your penalty pile by the end of the game. Game number 3 is Scale Twister. For this game, I've taken a colorful version of my circle of fifths and printed it out and laminated it and added a little spinny thing to it. You can easily buy packs of these spinny things on Amazon. They just clip right into a piece of paper, so you don't have to laminate it. I just thought I would. To play this game, you'll spin once to find out what scale you'll play, D major, and again to find out what your color rule is. So I've got yellow, which is play all slurred. Now I've written my color rules down here at the bottom, but you can change these every time you play if you like. I also like being a little bit goofy if you couldn't tell, so I added a few weird rules in there as well. So my rules include both technical stuff like slur to tongue to, or play double tongue, doubled notes, as well as goofy little things like play standing on one leg. Don't forget to mix up your majors or minors, because obviously when we've got a circle of fifths, there are majors and minors together on each color. So it's easy to forget your minors. You can take this twister game a little bit farther by just creating a blank version of it. So I've got a spinner on a blank one. Now because I've laminated this, I can write some exercises with a dry erase marker that will easily wipe off so I can do something different the next time. This is great if you're trying to memorize a piece and you want to write measure numbers or sections, or maybe you only have a handful of scales that you need to practice, so you just want to write the ones that you need to practice down. But again, get creative with the rules and remember that the point is to have fun. Game number 4 is what I call act it out. For this game, you're going to try practicing your scales in different moods or characters. For example, if you need to practice your C major scale, try practicing it in a sad way, in a happy way, in a mischievous way. And for an added challenge, try to come up with really random moods. Like, what would that scale sound like if you wanted to play it like you were hungry? Or what would it sound like if you needed to play it dorky? Or if you want to take this idea even further, you can try to come up with a character. What would this scale sound like if it was played by a 5-year-old? What would this scale sound like if it was played by a judge? Or go a little bit further. What would it sound like if it was Santa Claus playing it? Or maybe a Disney villain? The point is to try to make yourself laugh. Game number 5, I like to call Rockin' Scale. This is less of a game and more of just a way to goof off while you practice. For this one, I use a backing track while I practice my scales. You can either find a rock beat loop on YouTube easily enough to practice your B flat major scale, or maybe you're in the mood to get funky, so don those shades and find a funk beat to play with. Also play around with drones. You can easily find apps or videos on YouTube that will allow you to drone the tonic of the scale. This is actually really good practice for intonation, but it makes for something slightly different as well in your practice. I personally like to use an Indian tempura sound just because it's a little bit different. Game idea number 6 is to use dice. There are musician-specific dice out there that you can find that have either rhythms, notes, or scales on them, but I just like to use a regular 6-sided die. These are great if you only have a handful of scales you have to practice if you, say, have an exam coming up. You can make things a little bit more complicated by adding more die. So you roll 1 to find the scale, another to find a rule, or take it even further and another to find the rhythm, another to find the dynamic, another to find the pattern. You go nuts. You could also choose to use slightly larger mini-sided die. So for example, I've got a lot of these very pretty 12-sided die, which are extremely handy because they can easily represent each of our 12 chromatic notes. So if I need to practice all my scales, they make this a little bit easier. And finally, game idea number 7 is make your own board game. For the creatively minded of you out there, why not just make your own board game? If you enjoy being crafty, it adds an extra level of fun. You could choose to reinvent a game that already exists by just changing the rules or various elements of it, or you could choose to create a game from scratch, your very own scale game. But don't make your game too easy. Just think about how boring easy games are. We're having more fun when we're being challenged. And the funny thing is, we're learning our scales better that way too. I hope you guys found these games inspiring and found at least one that you could add to your own practice. But also feel free to use any of these games as a springboard to come up with your own. Do you already have games that you play in your practice? Or do you have any fun ideas for how we can modify the games that I've already presented here? If so, I would love to hear about it, so let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the ideas in this video, please don't forget to subscribe and share the video because I would like to start a scale revolution. Let's change the way everyone thinks about their scales. Now, get out there and have fun.